Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you turn? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our Mayor, the councillors, council staff and all members of the public joining us online and in person. Tonight we'll be live streaming this meeting on Facebook, YouTube and the Banyule Council website. We kindly ask everyone to please ensure your mobile phones are switched off or muted to avoid any interruptions during the meeting. We'll be going live shortly. We're now live.
Hello everyone and good evening. Welcome to the Banyule Council meeting of the 13th of April 2026. I open the meeting this evening at 7 p.m. I'll start this evening by acknowledging that our meeting is being held on the traditional land of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and on behalf of Banyule City Council I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians. I would also like to pay my respects to the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung elders, past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders who may be joining us here this evening. Our Banyule community is made up of diverse cultures, beliefs, abilities, bodies, sexualities, ages and genders. We are committed to access, equity, participation and rights for everyone. Principles which empower, foster harmony and increase the well-being of an inclusive community. I will now pass you on to our Chief Executive Officer, Ms Alison Beckwith, who will read out the formalities.
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome everyone to this ordinary meeting of Council. As Mayor indicated, my name is Alison Beckwith and I'm the CEO here at Banyule Council. Tonight's meeting is being held in accordance with Council's governance rules and the Local Government Act 2020. The meeting is being live streamed via Council's website and Facebook page, and the live streams will be available on Council's website and YouTube page after tonight's meeting. The live stream is not interactive, so for those viewing from home, any comments or private messages directed to us while the meeting is in conduct will not be presented to the councillor group or have any bearing on tonight's meeting. Council's request to speak processes does allow participation of our residents without having to attend meetings in person. I'll now take you through some public participation guidelines for tonight's meeting. The public question time occurs at the end of the meeting. If a member of the public who submitted a question is present at that time, they are welcome to read out their question as submitted or have their question read out by a staff member. If the submitter is not present, the question will not be read out during the meeting. All public questions and the answers to those are included in the meeting minutes following tonight's meeting. I just remind you all that no statement may be derogatory, defamatory, objectionable in language or directed to an individual councillor, member of staff, ratepayer or member of the public. A 2-minute time limit applies to all requests to speak and the timer will be used and a warning will sound at the 1.5 minute mark. Officers will sum up for the last 30 seconds if they are reading a statement out on behalf of a resident, and the Mayor does request that if you are requesting to speak tonight and you hear that sound, just start summing up yourself. We ask that all present in the gallery please ensure your mobile phones are either switched off or on a silent mode to avoid disruptions to tonight's meeting. I also wish to remind everyone present that Council has a zero tolerance for any form of bullying, harassment or violence. All present in the gallery, including Community Council staff and councillors, are expected to respect individual views of all others, irrespective of their own views held, and allow everyone to respectfully participate in the council meeting. For those of you in the gallery tonight, if you do choose to depart the gallery before the meeting does end, we ask you kindly to not hold conversations until you're actually outside the building. This beautiful heritage building does have acoustic issues, so conversations held in the foyer or indeed downstairs does reverberate up and affects those listening at home. So I thank you in advance for that. I will now introduce you to the councillors in attendance tonight, and I will start to my left. I have Councillor Peter Castaldo representing Griffin Ward, Councillor Matt Wood representing Hordern Ward, Councillor Alicia Curry representing Ibbett, and Councillor Mary O'Kane representing Olympia Ward. And to my right, I have the Mayor, Councillor Alison Champion, also representing Sherborne Ward, the Councillor Alida McKern, representing Chelsworth Ward, and Councillor Elizabeth Neeling, representing Beale Ward. Councillor Mark Di Pasquale will be attending a bit later. He's just been held up at work and will arrive as soon as possible. This evening, we are also joined by the executive team of Council. So over to my left, I have Joseph Tobacco, Director of Community Wellbeing, and Jonathan Risby, Acting Director, City Development. And over to my right, I have Darren Bennett, Director of Assets and City Services, and Mark Gilio, Director of Corporate Services. Joining the councillor team tonight are members of the Governance and Integrity team and also our IT team to support tonight's meeting. Thank you for participating. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Alison. So this evening we do have an apology that is noted from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Rick Garotti. I'm not aware that we have any other apologies. Okay, could I have a confirmation of the minutes, please, for two meetings? The ordinary meeting of Council held on the 23rd of March 2026 and the confidential meeting of the Council also held on the 23rd of March 2026. So could I have a councillor move and second the minutes? Moved, Councillor Alicia Curry. Seconded, Councillor Matt Wood. Putting that in motion, all favour? And again, so in favour, that's carried. As required, disclosure of interest by councillors. So as required at any other meeting of council, our councillors must declare a conflict of interest at the start of the meeting and leave when the item is presented to council. Councillors will be required to leave the meeting and return when the item is resolved. At any point throughout the meeting, if any councillor recognises they have a general or material conflict of interest, they can flag that at that point and follow the same procedure. So just asking the councillors, does anyone have a disclosure of interest this evening on any item? Okay, there are none. And any officers present this evening, does any of you have a conflict of interest in any of the items presented this evening? No? Okay, so there are none. There is no urgent business this evening. There are no petitions this evening. Item 8.1, award of contract number NPN 1.23, supply and delivery of prime movers and waste collections trucks, part 1. There is one speaker on this item. David Mulholland from Banyule Ratepayers Action Group is joining us this evening. Please come up to the lectern. Thanks very much, David. Lovely to see you. And you're welcome, and you have 2 minutes to speak.
Right. There are two serious issues in this report that cannot be ignored. The first one, climate emergency. Banyule declared a climate emergency in 2019 with a pathway to zero emissions by 2028. Yet tonight, you're being asked to spend millions of dollars on new diesel trucks. That locks in carbon emissions for the next decade until at least 2036. The report itself admits these trucks produce greenhouse gases, drive air pollution, and contribute to climate change. So the question is simple. If we're in a climate emergency, why are we buying diesel trucks? Other councils aren't waiting. Blacktown, Blue Mountains, Bathurst, Canberra, the East-West region in Adelaide, Shepparton, Toowoomba, to name a few, are already running or trialling electric garbage trucks. Interesting to note that these councils all have contract-based waste services. Second, who pays for this? These diesel trucks will be funded through Banyule's separate, uncapped waste rate system based on property value. And that system is fundamentally unfair, as previously stated by hundreds of residents in a petition to council. So tonight, council is asking residents to fund a high emissions fleet through an unfair charging system with no connection between cost and service. Banyule declared a climate emergency in 2019, yet tonight you're buying diesel. Are you serious about a climate emergency? As by the decision tonight, you will push zero carbon emissions down the road until 2036. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. So, councillors, before we move to the motion, does any councillor have a question or want to speak? Councillor Peter?
I have a question for the relevant officer. There are two vehicle classes that are up for discussion tonight and one that has been delayed. Could you please speak to those three classes of vehicles on some of the rationale on why we cannot purchase electric on the two that are coming to council tonight, and also update the residents on the third class?
Thank you, councillor, and through you, Mayor. There are three classes of assets that are up for renewal tonight. One is two prime movers. The second class is 5 side loader waste trucks. The third, which has been deferred, as you rightly say, are the smaller rear loaders. When the tender assessment looked at those, the options for both the prime mover and the waste trucks, one of the key criteria was fit for purpose. At this stage, there is no fit for purpose electric side loader available because this requires a left-hand drive. And when we looked at the prime movers, our prime movers need to they basically haul garbage from the waste transfer centre to the processor, and that requires quite a large clearance because it's going to a landfill site at this moment, and the clearance just wasn't adequate for that, again, fit for purpose for that prime mover to traverse that terrain.
Thanks, Director. Did you have another question?
Just a little bit more clarification around the rear loaders, which might go to answering the question of this evening.
Thank you for the follow-up question, and through you, Mayor. The rear loader assessment of the tender responses is still under consideration and isn't yet ready to be presented to council.
And one final question. They have a life cycle of around 8 to 10 years. If there was a circumstance in which electric vehicles came on the market that could replace these vehicles, do we have options?
Again, through you, the prime mover life cycle is around 8 years. The side loader is around 5 years. So should an alternative that is fit for purpose come on the market, then council would have an option to dispose of those trucks or put those trucks back into auction and consider alternatives.
Thanks very much. Does any other councillor have a question of officers at this point? Okay. So we've got a report and we do have a recommendation. So do I have a mover for the recommendation? Thanks very much, Councillor Matt. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mary. Councillor Matt, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll just make a couple of comments. There's 3 items coming up for procurement, and you might not hear a lot of commentary from them, but understand there's a lot of conversations happening in the background to check that officers are following due process. And we look at the tender scorecards and so on. There's a lot of interrogation that goes on with that. So that's one comment I'll make across the next 3 items. Just to the Speaker's comments, there's a great appetite from the council group to move to this electric fleet, even so much so that we're starting to have early conversations about what might our strategy be in terms of our risk appetite. How quickly will we dive into this when these things are on the market? But the community should rest assured that there is a real desire from the councillor group to get our fleet electrified as soon as we can. That's all for me. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Matt. And Councillor Mary, did you want to speak to the item at all? No. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Peter?
Yeah, I think the Speaker tonight raised some really important questions, and those are the same questions we asked of our officers this evening or in the last week. There have been ongoing conversations and attempts to bring forward electrification of the heavy vehicle fleet, and it's one of the most challenging areas in the electrification of industry and all of our council works. In this case, the heavy load B-doubles or the large transport vehicles to get it to the waste facility, as we heard, doesn't have the clearance to enable those trucks to go into those tip sites. As much as we'd like, some of the existing vehicles that are on the market in Australia now that will be going beyond trials this year are not quite there, providing us with the options to enable us to do an important essential service, and therefore we haven't moved forward on as a consequence of the information presented by officers. On the second one, the side loader vehicle, we've done extensive investigations into that too. What you might not hear in the media is the type of electric rubbish trucks. There's a big difference between rear loader and side loader. The rear loaders have a lot less work to do in their cycle. And so those vehicles are available now and they're on trial across Australia in a number of locations. We've also trialled one as well. But we're looking to work with some other providers that have more experience in the marketplace. We've also looked at the side loaders, but there are none in the market. And given that some of the locations, America and China, none of all the drive on those vehicles are on the wrong side of the vehicle. And so we could be a market leader and do extensive works on already new technology, which would burden our community with extensive costs, and therefore we'll be working with providers as they move forward and trying to bring them to market and take a leadership role in that.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to them? Councillor Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. The specified vehicles in the report are suitable to Council's waste management requirements. The suppliers have demonstrated commitments to environmental, social and governance principles. And as Councillor Castaldo mentioned, we understand the current limitations of the heavy waste vehicle market. However, we are positioning Council to transition to lower emission technologies in the near future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Matt, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? No. All right, thank you. Well, I'm going to put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 8.2, Council Report Contract Number 1511-2026, Panel for Civil and Drainage Maintenance Works. There are no speakers on this item. Councillors, does anyone have a question of officers? Okay, we've got a report in front of us. I'm calling for a motion on the recommendation. Okay. Do we have a mover? Councillor Elizabeth. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Alida. Councillor Liz is the mover. Would you like to speak? Councillor Alida, would you like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak? Okay, I'm putting that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 8.3, Procurement Australia 2706/0714 IT Services Contract. There are no speakers on this item. Does any councillor have a question of officers? Okay, we have a report before us. I'm calling for the motion. Do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Matt. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Elizabeth. Councillor Matt, would you like to speak? Councillor Liz, would you like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak? I put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 8.4, Banyule Cemeteries Trust. Protective Data Security Plan, or a PDSP attestation. There are no speakers on this item. We've got a motion in front of us. Does any councillor wish to speak to the item at all? Recommendation? Okay. Do I have a mover? I love the enthusiasm. Great. And you know what? I'll second it. There we go. So Matt's moving, I'm seconding. Matt, would you like to speak to the item? Okay, no, I won't either. That's all right. So I'm going to put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 8.5, Councillor Profession... No, it's not. Councillor Professional Development Opportunities. Yes, we do. Okay, we've got one speaker on the item. Kavan Hill from Banyule Ratepayers Action Group is going to speak to us and is speaking for the recommendation. Welcome. Nice to see you again, Kavan. You've got 2 minutes.
Same here. Thank you. Congratulations to the latest graduates from the AICD course. This augurs well for council. It's a nice rounding out of skills, and I'm sure that we can see an improvement in some of the rational decisions that you guys are going to have to make going forward. I note in the reports there's a lot of commentary about ratios for solvency, etc., etc. I'm a little concerned there's not too much there about capital budgeting and capital rationing. And I hope that with your further development, you'll entertain yourselves by actually coming to grips with a lot of that stuff. And that's particularly important when you look at some of the lazy assets that the council has got, to wit the parking area behind the Uniting Church in Seddon Street. To turn that into a park, I think will be irresponsible. It'll be a gross waste of a capital asset that could return a hell of a lot of money to the community, and we'd like to make some inputs to that.
I'm just going to interrupt you. Are you speaking to the item about councillor professional development opportunities?
Absolutely. So this goes to the core of it. So when capital budgeting comes up and the further education is grappled with, things like that asset will be duly considered. So congratulations to all concerned. One question, there's a section there that talks about ongoing development. Does that mean that having done the GICD course, that there are going to be supplementary trainings? And if so, what are the projected costs to the council for that training? I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Kavan. Okay, we have a recommendation, but does any councillor have a question of officers at this point? Okay, do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Elizabeth Neely. I will second, because there's a limited amount of enthusiasm. No, I got in there first. Councillor Liz has moved. I have seconded. Would any councillor... No, Liz, would you like to speak to the item?
I think I will. Thank you,
great.
Mayor. I love talking about professional development. I think they're important for councillors because local government, we operate in a complex environment. It's constantly evolving. We're required to make decisions on planning, infrastructure, community services, governance and financial management, as mentioned by the Speaker. Like many other professions, ongoing training ensures councillors stay up to date with legal obligations, policy changes and best practice, and this reduces the risk of poor decision making. For every council meeting, just like this evening, we interpret technical reports, we engage with diverse stakeholders, and we make strategic decisions that affect communities. And we're always having to put everyone in the community at the back of our minds when making these decisions. Very difficult. I believe that professional development supports transparency, accountability, and community trust. Well-informed councillors are better equipped to represent their constituents and act in the public interest, ensuring a strong understanding of what is needed. We had, at the last election, 3 councillors new to council elected this term, and as you've read, a lot of you have read the report, they've undertaken significant professional development doing the AICD course. So Councillor Wood, Councillor O'Kane and Councillor Curry, and I think it's a big course. It's a lot of work on top of the reading that we already do, and I congratulate you for that commitment because it's very important for this role. And well done for working through this amongst doing your duties of being a local representative and juggling the life of everyday people. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. I won't speak to the item. Would anyone else, any other councillor, like to speak to the item? Councillor Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kevin, for your comments, and Liz, appreciate that. And let me start by stating my sincere appreciation to the council and to the community for the opportunity to do this course. As Councillor Neely was suggesting, it's no light undertaking. There was about 100 hours of pre-work went into it, an intense 5 days, and then assignments and examinations. And I'm pleased to report I've got my results through and got through it all right successfully, so that's good. The most transferable lesson was the clear distinction between governance and management. And in our role of strategic direction and providing oversight, as opposed to not being drawn into execution of detail. Very important to distinguish between. This discipline certainly makes for better councils, better decisions, better outcomes for our community. So I'm sure that that's where we're all heading with that. This is applicable to Banyule and to council. The models on financial literacy, risk strategy were immediately relevant. We have a near on $200 million annual budget demanding genuine financial literacy and clear understanding of risk appetite. And this course sharpened both of those for mine and is a direct application to the work that we're doing in audit and risk. I did my course in a public course. I was the only LGA representative on the course. I had senior leaders from across all sectors. There was a couple of very senior people from Port of Melbourne. There was a former Victorian Chief Health Officer in the room, which was pretty special, and executives from all other walks of life. So that exposure in itself was valuable. The investment might appear to be substantial, but it is modest against the returns, is my belief. So I'm very keen to see Council continue to support this initiative. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Alicia Curry.
Wrong button. Thanks, Mayor. So it was a very interesting course. I'm going to speak a little bit more personally about this particular course that Councillor O'Kane and I did that was run through the Australian Local Government Women's Association. Great support service. We need to see 50% representation in local government from women, and we're not there yet. So courses run by ALGWA are important in pursuing these leaderships. They also instill confidence in women to lead and take on leadership positions. I think this underpins good decision making. It's really important for councillors to understand, as Councillor Wood said, that difference between the strategic movement of the council through the council group and the executive team and their decision making that's led by our CEO. So it was also a great lesson in how great culture can underpin these great outcomes. And also not just about a defensive position, but also about exploring strategies and looking forward to take advantage of opportunities that arise with a keen eye to the impact on council as well as the risk. So we take both those things on board. I look forward to applying some of what I learned through the council decision making, and I'll hand back to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Mary.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr Hill, for your words of encouragement and your support of us doing this very valuable course. We certainly will be applying as much of that vast, complex knowledge to our decision making. Whether we come to the same decisions or not, we can debate those out as well at the time. So the AICD course is one of Australia's most well recognised directors governance courses. As Councillor Curry said, that we did it through the Australian Local Government Women's Association, which had participation from women all across Australia, and rural and urban. So the kind of the balance of experience is significant, I think, when compared also to Councillor Wood's experience of doing the course. As Councillor Wood said, it involves extensive preparation taught over 5 days with application-driven assessments. Councillor Curry and I are yet to do those assessments because we've recently just finished the coursework. And it is a phenomenal amount of work that we've got to process and then not apply what is written on the paper, but actually apply it directly to assignments and case studies. It's very case study driven. The greatest value of this course, I think, for the Banyule community is how it grows my capacity to be a better decision maker within a group dynamic. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. And welcome Councillor Mark Di Pasquale to the meeting. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Liz, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? Okay, I've got a motion in front of us. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 8.6, Instrument of Delegation from Council to the Chief Executive Officer. There are no speakers on this item. Before we move the motion, does any councillor have a question of our officers? Okay, we've got a report before us. I'm calling for a motion. Do I have a mover on this motion? Councillor Mary O'Kane. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Elizabeth Neely. Councillor Mary, would you like to speak to the item? Councillor Liz, would you like to speak to the item? Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay, I put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 8.7, Instrument of Delegation from Council to members of Council staff. There are no speakers on this item. Does any councillor have a question of officers? So there's an officer's report before us, calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Matt. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mark. Councillor Matt, would you like to speak to the item? Councillor Mark, would you like to speak to the item? Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay, I'll put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 8.8, Instrument of Appointment to Authorised Officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987. There are no speakers on this item. We have a motion in front of us. Does any councillor have a question of the officers? Okay, do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Peter Costello. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Matt. Okay, Councillor Matt is seconding. Councillor Peter, would you like to speak to the item? Councillor Matt, would you like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay, I put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 8.9, Instrument of Subdelegation and Appointment and Authorisation, Environment Protection Act 2017. There are no speakers on this item. Before we move to the motion, does any councillor have a question of officers? Okay, we have a report before us. Do I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Alicia Curry. Do I have a seconder? I'll second it. Councillor Alicia, would you like to speak? I won't speak as the seconder. Would any other councillor like to speak? Okay, I'll put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. 8.1, record of councillor meetings. We have one speaker on this item. Kevan Hill from Banyule Ratepayers Action Group is addressing us and speaking for the recommendation. Thanks very much, Kevin. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, courtesy of the government's team today, I had a phone call which was very helpful and very enlightening. Apparently, there are no minutes kept of these councillor briefings, which is very disappointing. But I'm particularly interested to know more about what was discussed in the waste to energy delivered by an independent expert. Now, the last time Bragg raised waste to energy, we got a bit of a rubbishing, particularly from some green element advocates. So we want to know what an expert would tell council that might have been different from the view taken by others. Is it possible that the CEO has the authority to prepare a short report as to what was spoken so that the public knows what in hell is actually going on? Because we have at least one councillor saying waste to energy is never going to happen, and here we have a meeting that's not recorded saying that you're talking to experts. So we'd like to know what's going on. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kevan. I might just ask our CEO, is it a possibility to answer Kevan's questions from the appropriate officer?
Through you, Mayor, council briefings are to actually help council with future decisions, so it's bringing different information. So there will be a future report at an appropriate point in time that steps through the decision making of a waste to energy. So far we've had 3 different briefings from 3 different sources so that the council are getting a full picture of what that can mean, and that'll come to a public report in the near future.
Great, thanks very much. So does any councillor have questions of officers before we move to the motion? Yeah, go on, Councillor Matt.
Through you, Mayor, to the relevant officer, can you just explain what constitutes a recorded meeting in this context as opposed to general meetings that happen daily?
Thank you, Councillor Wood, and through you, Mayor. So a record of councillor attendance is defined in our governance rules. It's a hangover from the Local Government Act 1989, which described an assembly of councillors. The difference in that it sets it away from other interactions that councillors may have is that it's a planned or scheduled meeting for the purpose of discussing the business of council or briefing councillors, and is attended by at least one member of council staff, and is not a council meeting, a delegated committee meeting, or a community asset committee meeting. So that's the clear definition. If the councillor meeting falls within that realm, we are required under the governance rules to prepare a record of the council meetings for transparency and accountability around decisions, discussions, and of course any conflicts of interest that might arise.
Thanks very much. Did any other councillor have a question at all of the officers? Okay, I'm now calling for a motion. Do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Elizabeth Neely. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mary O'Kane. Councillor Liz, would you like to speak to the item? Councillor Mary, would you like to speak to the item? Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. I will make a couple of comments just in regards to your comments there, Kevin. And the officers just explained when these are recorded and when there's not. There's a lot of conversations that happen that aren't in here. There's items, I'm just looking at the very first one as an example, the Diamond Valley project, where Councillor Di Pasquale and I had a private briefing. When I say private, everyone was invited, but because it's in our ward, we've gone and we've really dived into the detail. Trust me, you don't need the minutes of this conversation. But what it does, it's very important. So as representatives of the community, we're diving into that information to be able to bring to a decision which is absolutely documented, and that's what you see in the reports. So, I mean, all I'd say is just give you the confidence that these meetings are absolutely necessary, and it allows us the opportunity to learn so that we're representing and making adequate decisions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay, I'll put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 11.1, 18 to 28 Irvine Road, Ivanhoe. Demolition and construction of new pavilions at Chelsworth Park, P3162025. There are 6 speakers on this item. We will start with Sienna Whiteman from Old Ivanhoe Grammarians Football Club, who is speaking for the recommendation. Sienna, please come to the lectern. You have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Sienna. I'm a Banyule ratepayer, a local resident and daily user of the park, and Vice President of the football club. I want to emphasise that this project is not new. The redevelopment of the Chelsworth Park pavilions has been discussed and refined for over more than a decade. Many in this community have invested significant time and energy into this process. What is before you tonight is not a new proposal, but the continuation of a long and well-considered process that has already taken considerable time. Since the last meeting where the decision was deferred, the pavilion facade has been revised, with the soccer club pavilion being darkened and timber look cladding added to the underside of the eaves on both pavilions. These changes were undertaken in consultation with council officers, specifically to respond to the concerns raised at the last meeting and to ensure the design is appropriate, restrained and responsive to the parkland setting. Council officers have maintained their recommendation for approval. The revised design represents a clear improvement on the existing fragmented pavilion buildings, particularly given the soccer pavilion's red brick finish and prominent siting. The new design sits more comfortably within the park and achieves better architectural cohesion overall and blends more effectively with the surrounding parkland. While a small number of residents have been very vocal in their opposition, it is important to recognise that there are hundreds of quieter supporters of this project who rely on people like myself to represent their interests. Local club members, families and regular park users who stand to benefit directly from these upgrades and who rely on council to consider the broader community interest. I find it frustrating that this process has been so delayed when the broader community benefit of this project is so significant. The existing facilities are not fit for purpose, they do not meet contemporary standards for safety, accessibility or inclusivity, and continue to limit participation, particularly for women, older supporters and people with disabilities. This redevelopment delivers modern, inclusive community infrastructure at no cost to council, with ongoing maintenance responsibilities remaining with Ivanhoe Grammar. I respectfully but strongly urge council to resolve this matter tonight by supporting the officer recommendation and approving this important community project. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sienna. Councillor Alida has a question of the Speaker, is that right? Mm-hmm.
Through you, Mayor, not of the Speaker, but something the Speaker said I would like to ask a question of the appropriate Director. Thank you, Mayor. The Speaker mentioned design changes that have been made to the application plan since the last Council meeting on the 23rd of March. Can you verify that there have been any changes to the application plans since that meeting?
Through the Chair, no. The discussions have been had with the permit applicant. However, the plans have not been formally amended yet.
Right. So just to understand then, the plans as they stand were exactly the same now as they were at the last meeting?
Through the Chair, that's correct.
Thanks very much. Our second speaker, Dean Kyriakou, will address the Council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Dean, welcome to the lectern. And Dean, you have 2 minutes to speak this evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening, councillors and mayor. My name is Dean Kyriakos. I'm the Vice President of Old Ivanhoe Soccer Club. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight in support of the proposed development at Chelsworth Park. Our club is proud to be a growing and inclusive community. We currently have around 300 registered players, ranging from our youngest participants in the under-7s all the way through to our over-45s team. Most importantly for us, 232 of the players at the club are a part of the junior program, which highlights the vital role our club is playing in youth development and community engagement. Despite the undeniable success of the club since its inception, our facilities have unfortunately not kept pace with the growth we have seen in our player base and community. The current pavilions are simply not set up to standard and, more importantly, are not safe for use for all members of the community. This is particularly emphasised when we consider the experience of our female players. At present, we do not have a dedicated female change room or bathroom, as our women's toilets are shared with the away team change rooms. During match days, this creates a situation where female players, members and spectators do not have access to safe and private space. This is unacceptable in a modern sporting environment. We currently have 66 registered female players and 5 dedicated women's teams. These numbers continue to grow and we're committed to supporting this growth. But without appropriate facilities, we are unable to offer the safe and inclusive environment that our players deserve. We also note that the existing pavilion does not have any compliant DDA access, which makes access for disabled members of the community difficult and dangerous. The new proposed pavilions at Shellsworth Park represent more than just a building project. They are an investment in safety, inclusion and the future of our community. They will provide all of our members with a safe, functional and welcoming space to participate in sport and connect with one another. This development will allow our club to continue to grow in the right direction and ensure that every player, regardless of age or gender, feels valued and protected. On behalf of Old Ivanhoe Soccer Club, I strongly urge the Council to support this proposal. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Dean, and my apologies for mispronouncing your name. Our next speaker is Robin Roberts. She is addressing the Council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Welcome, Robin. You have 2 minutes.
Planning report. The first link to documentation shows a completely different plan to what the officers are talking about in the report. Completely different surface on the buildings. I hope you've all seen that first link. The second link goes to the application and shows what is intended, but anyone who's not very good at reading long planning documents might look at the first link and say, oh yeah, that looks good. This is not responsible government. You need to have your planning documents absolutely accurate. Another reason is that the heritage report from Council's heritage person said that the gun building should not be removed. Now, it could be altered, but they said it should not be removed. And yet the Council officer's report says we'll go with what the applicant is saying without giving any reasoning for the discrepancy between the two. That is completely unacceptable. The SLO and ESO are other overlays over the land. The SLO has not been addressed directly. They are meant to give an analysis of how the proposal meets or doesn't meet or partially meets the SLO requirements. That has not been done. Council's changed the way it does planning reports. Instead of being technical documents that tick all the boxes, go through all the planning controls, they waffle on about issues that have been raised in consultation. And unfortunately, most of the issues are the ones you've heard previously, not the flaws that might have been picked up. So I'll probably run out of time to say everything I want to, but I talked last time about parking. Talking to the planning officer this afternoon, or early this afternoon, he didn't understand statements that had been made about increasing the intensity of use on school sports days. I was there when a member of one of the clubs explained that the 4 new rooms to accommodate girls will also have petitions, which enables the staging to happen back to back.
Thank you very
that
much.
increases
Please take a
intensity,
seat,
another
Robin.
issue that hasn't been
Our
addressed.
next speaker is Alice Maloney from Ratio Consultants, addressing the Council in person and speaking for the recommendation. Welcome back, Alice. Nice to see you again.
Thank you for having me. I'm speaking on behalf of Ivanhoe Grammar School. Following on from the previous council meeting, we understood the main concerns stemmed from the materials presented during the lease negotiations through to the plans prepared for the planning application and why the materials appeared to have changed. I won't make comments about artistic licence for architects, but the materials have changed because some pragmatism was required. The charred timber, which appeared to be shown in the initial renders, is just not fit for purpose. We've got flooding considerations to consider at this site. Melbourne Water, in their conditions, has required flood-proof materials, so the blockwork represents an appropriate material which has due regard to the use of the facility for sporting goods and within the park environs. So the high quality honed brick material is a really high quality finish. It shows the aggregate within the blockwork, so it's not just a typical blockwork, it's a high quality finish. We've agreed to introduce the timber lining to the underside of the eaves, and it's timber look lining, so it ensures that the maintenance is appropriate for the use of the facility, knowing that it will go back into council's hands in due course. And these are matters which we think can be dealt with by condition on permit. Pavilion B, which is the single-storey pavilion, we have agreed to a tone which is a darker grey tone, and we feel that that will sit more comfortably with the environs of the park. And altogether, the facility is just a significant improvement on the current facilities, both in terms of operations and in terms of appearance. So we really recommend that this be supported tonight.
Great, thanks very much, Alice. Our next speaker is Liz McLaughlin, addressing the council in person and speaking against the recommendation. Okay, welcome Liz.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. I'm not objecting to the pavilions, but to the change of material on the facades and also the process that has gone forward. And in fact, a large number of residents and ratepayers did in fact object. Look, this is public land and not a school venue. And in my view, this public-private partnership between Banyule City Council and Ivanhoe Grammar appears to privilege the school over residents and ratepayers. I do understand Council's attraction to having Ivanhoe Grammar pick up the bill, because after all, who doesn't like someone else picking up the bill? But financial convenience can't justify sidelining residents and ratepayers. And in fact, we've heard tonight that from Ivanhoe Grammar representatives that there have been some material changes, but why hasn't that gone out in, more widely to residents? Holding a consultation in December with an invitation that showed the original park-sensitive designs and having notice that people had to object, etc., or comment by the 9th of January was most unreasonable. We were consulted on one design direction, but we weren't consulted properly on the later material change. And if there have been material changes now, why can't we have some consultation? Chelsworth is too special, too loved for council to get this wrong. Please pause, review and require a design response that is genuinely consistent with the original parkland sensitive intent. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Liz. Our next speaker is Owen Ryan, who is addressing the council in person and speaking against the recommendation. Hello, Owen, welcome. Thanks for being here tonight. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Sports facilities have come a long way since the prefab hut that was at this oval in the 50s, but so has the planning policy. Chelsworth Park is not a normal suburban sports field. Since the last alterations to these pavilions, our planning controls have substantially advanced the recognition of the Yarra River corridor and recognise this as a highly sensitive and environmental area. Yet the proposal before you seems to prioritise sports above the actual planning considerations, as I would say. The report before you and the application documents make multiple references to Council's Sports Precinct Master Plan, which is just a council document. Neither make any reference to documents such as the Middle Yarra River Concept Plan, which is a formal document referenced in the planning scheme, which is required to be considered. Similarly, there's no evidence of a visual impact assessment having been undertaken, which is also required. There are also many inconsistencies. You've heard about the heritage impact statement, which describes timber cladding of the new pavilion being like the one in the 70s, and suggests that the applicant's consultant's reasoning for accepting demolition is based on different plans to the ones that have been put to council. Similarly, your own report accepts demolition on one hand of citing the applicant's reasons for heritage terms, but also notes that council's own heritage expert disagrees with those reasons. So I'm questioning why council is prioritising the advice of an applicant over its own expert. The question before you is not whether Chelsworth Park sport clubs need new facilities. They clearly do. It's whether, as planning authority, this particular design is appropriate, having regard to the actual planning controls in place at this location. I would suggest it is not. In planning terms, Chelsworth Park is a historic, environmentally sensitive area with some playing fields, not a sports reserve with some peripheral environment and landscape value. I suggest and would put to you that the proposal before you must be considered on that basis. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Owen. Councillors, we have a motion. Do we have any questions of officers at this point? Councillor Alicia.
Thanks, Mayor. My question to the relevant officer is in relation to flooding of the site. The report that has been put forward by Mark on the flood risk management plan indicates that the site will flood at a level that's about 18.22 metres and there's requirements put in place. Could you provide an explanation of how that's going to operate when it's suggested that this will reach the level of the pavilions themselves?
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. Yes, you're correct, 18.22 takes it about to Flora Grove in terms of the flood level. It's matched sort of by the LSIO marking in the planning scheme. So in terms of what's been put forward, obviously Melbourne Water has put a number of conditions to council when we referred it to them. They have put forward Melbourne Water, the applicant has put forward a flood risk management plan. It has various items in, but the flooding is from the river. There is some time provided for the flooding to obviously come down the river in a rain event, so 14 and a half hours I think is in the report to make a decision about obviously not to occupy the building. So it's part of the flood risk management plan is to obviously monitor the conditions in the river and obviously make the right decisions that occurred with plenty of time to do that.
Sorry, further question on Melbourne Water's response. So on clause 5.1, what size floods will affect Chelsworth Park pavilions? There's a note there that say the floods greater than 1 in 2, which is 50% AEP flood event on the Yarra River, and the pavilions affected and around the 20% AEP, which is annual exceedance probability, puts the risk at about a 1 in 5 year probability. And I understand from conversations that there was a bit of toing and froing between Melbourne Water to get this across the line. Could you speak to that, please?
Yes, so I understand. So through you, Mayor, our understanding is there was some discussion between the applicant and Melbourne Water about the use of the facility and why a flood risk management plan was appropriate. In the end, it appears Melbourne Water has accepted that by putting forward a list of conditions. Yes, you're correct, about a 20% chance of a small event flooding the building based on that annual occurrence probability, which exists today as it does there. So again, there's significant time. It's river flooding, not rainfall flooding, so there is time to make decisions on what to do with that.
One final question on the insurance and risk on the site. I understand that this is taken on by the applicant.
Yes, you are correct. Obviously, we're considering a planning decision tonight, but separate to that, we do have a lease agreement in place, and that has certain conditions that will reduce the risk to council as the property owner and put the obligations back on the obviously leaseholder.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Peter, you had questions?
Got two questions based on questions from the audience tonight. The first one is for the relevant officer. When we put the planning application up online, why do we have images that are not reflective of the current planning application?
Through the Chair, thank you for that question. As part of the application, the extensive notification occurred in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act. And that notification included direct notice to all adjoining owners and occupiers, as well as five signs on site. The application was also advertised on Council's website, and that included the current plans and images. However, unfortunately, some of the concept plans also were included in that suite of information. So there was conflicting information on the website. However, all of the information was included in terms of the current application in accordance with the requirements of the Planning and Environment Act.
I've also got a question through you, Mayor, regarding some of the planning controls, the SLOs and heritage. Could the relevant officer please respond to whether council officers considered all of those and what was their decision?
Yep, certainly officers, as per the recommendation, considered all of the planning controls that affect the site, including the heritage overlay, the significant landscape overlay and the environmental significance overlay. When considering those three planning controls, it's important that a balanced approach be taken and the pros and cons with each of the overlays be weighed up against each other. As per the officer's report, from a heritage perspective, the net community benefit on what was to be achieved through the proposal was deemed appropriate and subject to conditions. The officer's recommendation is for approval. Likewise, the significant landscape overlay seeks to protect the Yarra River corridor environs. And as per the officer's report, it's the firm view of the officers that the proposal is respectful of the site. It does cluster and seek to locate buildings together, as well as retain vegetation that's got significant heritage and landscape and environmental qualities.
And finally, did I hear correctly that the applicant has also submitted some alternative materials to respond to community sentiment and requests made for them to accommodate materials or finishes to the building?
Through the Chair, that's correct. After the last council meeting, the permit applicant reflected on the discussion on the night and submitted, as part of a conversation with officers, possible alternatives to address the concerns that were discussed, including the use of a pebble brick for Pavilion B, as well as the use of timberlook cladding for the eaves of both buildings.
Yeah. Okay, does any other councillor have a question of officers on this item? Okay, we move to a motion. You have a question, or you're happy to move a motion? Okay, so we have an officer's report. So we've got Councillor Alida as the mover of the recommendation with...
We just need to look at the amendments.
Right, so we have an amendment. Okay.
Okay. Through you, Mayor, I'll just read out the amendments. Amendment R, Pavilion A, require that in situ concrete with Reckley form liner 2/95 Amazonas be used as specified in drawing SK 801 revision D, date 21/6/23, in lieu of the pattern block work shown in drawing SK 803 revision F, date 27/10/25. S, Pavilion B, require that an alternative to charred timber cladding shown in drawings SK 801 revision D and SK 802 revision D, date 21/6/23, be specified that closely replicates its dark, matte and textured appearance to maintain the original architectural intent of a visually recessive form integrated with the Yarra River landscape, in lieu of the light-coloured blockwork shown in drawing SK 802 revision F and SK 803, dated 27th of the 10th, 25. And T, pavilions A and B, requires that feature elements originally expressed in spotted gum in drawing SK 802 and revision SK 802 revision D, date 21 of the 6th, 23, be replaced with flood resilient materials that closely replicate its warm natural colour tones, linear grain and texture, and matte non-reflective finish in lieu of the CFC soffit shown in drawings SK 802 revision F, dated 27th of the 10th, 25.
So just confirming you're moving that. Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Alicia Curry. Now, Councillor Alida, would you like to speak to the item as the mover?
I would like to speak to the item. Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank all our speakers. And I also like to assert that this motion does indeed support the delivery of 2 new modern fit-for-purpose sports and community pavilions at Chelsworth Park. We understand that the existing facilities are no longer adequate. That's not in question. What is in question is how we deliver those buildings in a way that respects the unique Yarra River environs, particularly given the planning controls, and 2 that have been mentioned, the significant landscape overlay and the environmental significance overlay that apply to this application. Chelsworth Park is one of Banyul's premier public open spaces within the Yarra River corridor, valued for its natural character and sense of escape from the built environment. While parts of the park are leased to Ivanhoe Grammar School, it does remain a public asset, and decisions about its future must reflect that. Council also wears 2 hats here as landowner and planning authority. Should we not hold ourselves to the same standards we apply to others? The planning controls require development to be visually recessive and responsive to the natural environment. The original design was publicly consulted on and responded to that through the use of charred timber, spotted gum and textured in situ concrete. Since then, we've seen a shift towards a more utilitarian, institutional style of materials like concrete blockwork, which are more visually dominant and less aligned with those objectives. We also need to acknowledge the flood risk. The site may be inundated in a 1 in 100 year event, and that definitely must be addressed. But flood resilience should not mean abandoning good design. It should mean designing more carefully and sympathetically. And this motion tries to strike that balance. It ensures flood resilience while maintaining the original design intent by requesting 3 revisions to our material finishes to the 2 pavilions. If charred timber cannot be used, it should be replaced with a material that achieves the same outcome: dark, matte, textured and visually recessive. I don't believe light-coloured concrete blockwork that is flat will achieve that design intent. The same applies with the spotted gum elements. We can retain their warmth and character even if the material changes that replicates actual timber. In situ concrete with a Recley form liner selected to achieve a visually recessive, textured and landscape responsive outcome, yet has high flood resistance, is considered a suitable finish, as was specified in the original plans. This is not about insisting on a specific product, but ensuring we don't lose an environmentally sensitive design outcome.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Lovely, thank you. And Councillor Alicia, as the seconder, would you like to speak to the item? Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Mayor. So just initially, I just want to respond. We had a lot of comments and we've got various views in the room. I think there is consensus in some areas that the pavilions are welcome to the suburb of Ivanhoe. And I agree with some of the comments that said it's hard to understand why the concept plans are so different from the plans that are put up for council to decide on. The council are wearing a planning authority hat tonight, so although the concept plans had been put out for consultation, this is not going to be one of the considerations that I make as a councillor, given that some of that concept plan happened before my time. I'm not trying to rewrite history with this. However, my main concern here is, does the planning application respond to the planning scheme? And does it satisfy the requirements, and for me, particularly the ESO and particularly the significant landscape overlay? Now, those overlays are put in for location-based requirements. In this day and age, with all the planning reforms that are coming through, it's really important that we look at those overlays. I'm going to quote from a couple of the overlays. So the ESO that sits over the site asked us to consider whether the location, bulk and appearance of a building or works will be in keeping or enhance the visual amenity derived from the natural and landscape character of the area, and the need to maintain the natural environment as the dominant visual element of the area. The SLO also asks us to the proposed buildings on the landscape due to height, bulk, colour, general appearance. So I don't find the application satisfies that in the planning scheme. So I will be supporting the amendment that comes as close to what the concept plan is, not because of the concept plan, but because this responds to the planning scheme in a positive way, and the original doesn't strike that balance for me. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak on this item? Councillor Peter Castaldo? Yep.
Yeah, look, this is particularly difficult. There's some amendments here that have come just at the last moment. I was foreshadowing an alternative recommendation to align it more simply with what was coming forward in the application. The most important thing here is to deliver football pavilions for our sports clubs. And that's a primary objective of mine and the councillors here this evening. And if we're all in agreement, sometimes it's better to make some accommodations for variations. I was going to move with the change in blockwork and eave lining, but this recommendation is pretty close to that now. And I may be, I believe, I put on the spot. This will accommodate both the sports clubs' requirement to deliver 2 pavilions to their requirements, but also accommodate some of the residents in a way that doesn't impose a particular material, the charred wood. That is not going to happen now. With this amendment, there is an alternative material that will replace that, but go some way to accommodating some of the residents. And the last thing we want is a contested design that goes to VCAT or anything else in the journey. I want this to go through as quickly as possible. And I think with these amendments, we can achieve that and deliver the pavilions. And there's not too much a deviation from the materials put forward at the permit, and achieve an outcome for both parties. This has been very difficult for us, and it's been about 8-9 years that I've been involved in this. I want to see this delivered, and I think this can go there.
Okay. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the item? Councillor Mary?
Thank you, ma'am. Just preface this by saying it's been a very, very difficult few days of discussion, debate, research, going backwards and forwards, shifting positions, and I'd just like to to thank Councillor Castaldo for his considerable ability to analyse and be accommodating. I'd like to also thank Councillors McKern and Curry for their research on this issue. I'd like to say also that the proposed pavilions are significant in size, will be imposing in their settings and transformative of these spaces, and will exist for generations. They will meet the current and future functional needs of the school and the clubs, and that's what we all want. There is also the value that it has to the community that don't use the pavilions, who are also stakeholders. And that is of their environmental sensitivity and coherence of the environment in which they will sit, making this a significant issue. When we deferred this item last meeting, it was my hope that we were actually going to looking at suggestions of materials that would improve the natural look to reduce the visual imposition. I do think, and also we've considered very, very deeply the conditions that we must meet for Melbourne Water as the mandatory referral authority. I'd just like to say I'm going to support the amendments put up by Alida McKern. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the item? Councillor Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me begin by acknowledging the volunteer-run community groups that are caught up in all of this. Those that have called and emailed recently, thank you so much. The views and persistence and your patience is not gone unnoticed, and nor is the work that you do in the community. So I just want to make that acknowledgement. Our fundamental duty was stated earlier. It's simple: to promote and facilitate community activity and participation in sport, and including building good spaces. I'm conscious that the community came into this expecting one thing, and we find ourselves tonight proposing something different. This misalignment does matter, and it deserves to be acknowledged and understood, so I'm grateful for my councillor colleagues for what they've done. As a builder, I could pass comment on the proposed finishes, colours and materials, but that's not why I'm here. I'm elected to represent the strategic interests of this community and to allow professionals to execute the strategy, those external to our organisation and internal. The fact that we're debating colours and materials in the chamber doesn't sit well with me at all and suggests something in the process has not landed as it should have. I can't specifically look to that and understand exactly what we're suggesting there, so I'm not going to be drawn into this conversation. I want everybody, particularly the audience, to know that any decision I make this evening will always come back to the basic principles of what best enables participation in sport and good spaces with access to everyone, especially kids and equally women. I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item?
I have a quick question, just with the last minute changes. Will these changes be supported by Melbourne Water to the relevant director?
Can the relevant director answer that question?
Through the chair, the conditions of the permit, the conditions of the recommendation still required Melbourne Water to provide further comment on the material. These changes will also require Melbourne Water's consent. In terms of whether or not they will support these alternate materials, I can't answer that tonight.
Councillor Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just adding on to Councillor Neely's question. So if they are not accepted, will it come back again? Like, what's the process after that?
Through the chair, if Melbourne Water don't accept materials presented in response to these conditions, then an amendment to the planning permit would be required to reflect something that perhaps Melbourne Water will accept. So there would still be a statutory process to follow, and that may include further notification.
Mayor?
Sorry.
Councillor Mark, you have another question?
Just further question. So we could make a decision this evening to keep the ball rolling, but then it could be discussed later on with the relevant authorities.
Through the Chair, that's correct. A decision as per the alternate motion would result in a permit being issued, but further discussion and perhaps negotiation with Melbourne Water would be required if Melbourne Water had concern with the materials presented in response to those conditions.
Okay. Is there another question from another councillor or a comment from another councillor?
I'd just like to foreshadow, if this is defeated, they'll be moving the original officer's recommendation.
Thanks very much, councillor. Any other councillor have a question or would like to comment at all? Councillor Liz?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to comment, I think everyone knows that the need for the upgraded pavilion facilities at Charlesworth Park is clear and well established. As I mentioned earlier in the professional development report, we need to balance the needs of the community, looking at the net community benefit now and into the future. The proposed redevelopment delivers a functional and inclusive space, and that's what I would like to see happen for the community going forward. So, you know, with these amendments, I'm not sure, just there's still more processes to go forward, but I don't want to miss out on this quality build. We want this functional space for active recreation and passive recreation, and I will state that both are equally important. A space to be enjoyed by all the people of Ivanhoe, beyond Ivanhoe, the students from Ivanhoe Grammar and students from other schools. This is for everybody. Community concerns, particularly around the design and the visual integration, are valid and are being acknowledged, I believe, by Councillor McKern's amendments. Not everyone, though, will agree. There has been community consultation, and with these changes that do happen, and it does tend to happen on lots of our pavilions, things do change and we have to keep rolling with it. I am voting to approve this application because I want to see this proceed and also incorporate improvements of the visual look of the pavilions.
Thanks very
I'm
much,
out of
councillor.
time.
Thank you very much. Okay, does any other councillor wish to speak to the item? Are you sure? Okay. No, it's my turn now. I'm just going to say thank you very much to everybody who has contributed to this conversation over 8 years. It has been 8 years. Thank you very much for your interest and your passion and your expertise and all that you've contributed, your emails, your phone calls, however else you've communicated, anybody in live stream land, thank you very much for everything to create an amazing item that we are finally going to be voting on this evening. So, I now put that in motion. You may have a right of reply. So, I've just been corrected and I didn't take 3 minutes. Our mover would like a right of reply.
Thank you so much.
You're
Mayor,
welcome, lovely
and
lady.
through you. What I'm hearing this evening from our councillor group is that councillors are on board for 2 new pavilions that meet required modern standards. So that should bring a few smiles to people in the gallery and watching in. I just wanted to reiterate really that this motion is not about insisting on a specific product. This motion is about ensuring that we don't lose an environmentally sensitive design outcome, because ultimately this motion is about consistency with our planning controls and meeting those requirements, consistency with what we showed the community, and consistency with the expectations for a unique parkland like Chelsworth Park, situated alongside the Yarra River and its natural bushland environment. If we get that right, we deliver better pavilions and a better outcome for our environment and our community. And I'm hoping that's why this motion is supported. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Okay, now I put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? So we have 1 against, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favour. So that is carried. Item 11.2, North East Link, Watsonia Station Car Park Urban Design and Landscape Plan Submission. Oh, don't leave now. You should hear this. This is great.
Oh, this is Watsonia. Don't leave.
Thank you for attending, everybody. Get home safely. There are 2 speakers. In a moment, there'll be 2 speakers on this item. Okay. Maybe close that door.
We can't have them both closed. It's a closed meeting.
That's right, it is, isn't it? Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so we have 2 speakers on this item. Michelle Jovis from Friends of Banyule will address the council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Welcome, Michelle. Nice to see you again. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Friends of Banyule endorses, for the most part, council's submission regarding the UDLP for Watsonia Station Car Park. However, we believe that the parkland at Frensham Reserve should be fully returned to the community and restored as per previous NALP commitments. However, we want to thank council for the submission, which is thorough and comprehensive, and we thank the staff involved. And I think the staff should be really proud of this submission. UDLP from NALP contractors is a lost opportunity to integrate parking, pedestrian access for cyclists and the bus network on both sides of the railway line connecting east and west. This UDLP fails to deliver DDA compliant access and to the station itself, and this is fundamental to the success of the project. And simply saying access to the station is outside of NALP's project scope is sadly inadequate, inequitable and a nonsense. The question of DDA compliant access has to be addressed by including access in the design, even if it is delivered by others at a later date. But this leave it out approach is symptomatic of how NALP treats the community, treats our wildlife, our health, our environment, and is substandard piecemeal fashion. The design, which is in a nutshell, is shortchanging the community. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Our
Mayor,
next...
Mayor, excuse me. May I,
Yeah.
if possible, ask
Yes,
a question?
of course, Mark. Yep, Mark has a question. Councillor
Through
Mark
you,
has a
Mayor.
question.
I didn't quite hear, Michelle, you mentioned about returning land back to community from North East Link. I didn't quite hear what that was.
Beg your pardon? You didn't...
I didn't quite hear what land you were talking about with regards to returning it back to community.
In council's submission, the land around Frensham Reserve that is currently being used as a car park, the council's submission proposes that some of that land is retained as spillover car parking, and the trade-off is that the height of the proposal would be reduced. So we were looking for a solution that, saves that land for community use rather than hard stand parking.
Okay, you okay with that? Okay. We have a video message being played on behalf of Melissa Murphy-Webster, who is speaking for the recommendation.
As Banyule is aware, there is growing concern about the scale, design and long-term impact of the proposed parking structure at Watsonia train station. While increased development around Transport Hub is understood, a 6-storey structure sets a precedent that could lead to much larger high-rise developments, similar to those planned for Greensborough. The key issue is not opposition to parking itself, but ensuring the design is appropriate and future-proof. At present, the proposal raises several serious concerns. The station itself is not being upgraded alongside the development, which limits the overall benefit to the community and will further impact residents and business when it's retrofit down the track. The structure would result in a permanent loss of views and open outlook, significantly altering the feel of the area. Safety is another major issue. The distance between the parking facility and the station creates risk, particularly for women, students, elderly residents, and people with disabilities. These concerns are heightened by the perception that the design does not adequately meet the standards required under Australia's Disability Discrimination Act. Residents are also troubled by the scale of the structure and the lack of meaningful community consultation. A development of this size risks dominating the landscape and changing the character of Watsonia, which is valued for its village feel. Importantly, alternatives such as underground or lower scale designs do not appear to have been fully explored. This raises questions about whether the current proposal is best possible outcome. What happens in Watsonia may set a precedent for other stations along the Banyule line. I am pleased that Banyule is pursuing changes for improvement to the plans before a permanent decision is made. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Melissa, and thank you to IT. We have a motion. Does any councillor have a question of the officers before we vote? Okay. There's an officer report before us set out in the papers calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mark.
Move, please, Mayor.
And Councillor Liz is seconding that. Councillor Mark, would you like to speak with the item?
No, only joking. Yes, I definitely would like to. Thank you. Very much so, Mayor. I do want to commend our officers for putting forward this submission. I think it is excellent. It's a great submission. With regards to the issues that are around the train station and North East Link and everything we've been advocating for over many years now. So one of the first things I do want to mention before I do forget, I want to thank Michelle. Thank you very much for your efforts with regards to the being on a North East Link community liaison group. It's great that you are bringing us back that information as well to the Environmental Committee that you sit on also for this council. So thank you very much for your updates and how you're bringing that committee into the conversation as well. So I really do appreciate that. The first thing I do want to mention is that the community does need to be aware that through the North East Link planning and how it has been delivered to our community, there was a big blob on the plans, Mayor. It was over the Watsonia, and we termed it as the big blob, which we didn't know what was happening there. You know, it was exactly where this car park is going, and it was part of the area where the North East Link, Spark, all the state government didn't really tell us what was going on in that area. They just said, oh, it's coming later. So I think that's the first thing that I think, on behalf of the community, that I don't think that's honest in the way of the state government. The state government should be more forthcoming with regards to plans that it has. Because it seems they do have plans, but they just don't want to either put them out because the community aren't going to be happy with them, and then they just say, okay, this is what you're going to get anyway, so just, accept it. But I think it's a bit of a message for our our state member, Colin Brooks, as well. He's very good at communicating with our community, and he's doing a lot for our community, and I just ask that he continues to try and get information to our community when he has it, or if he can get it, in a more timely manner. The reason being is because there's many people in the community who want to know what's going on. The traders want to know how to plan. Residents want to know what they're doing, traffic movements. But one of the real concerns is there hasn't been real concerted effort and pressure put on the upgrade of the Watsonia train station because of this. Okay, because there's been that big blob there, we're trying to put as much pressure on the state government to upgrade that train station as possible. The community are doing it as well, the traders are doing it, everybody's doing it, but they just don't have to because it's their job, so they will do what they want to do. So I just want to make the community aware.
Thanks very much, Councillor.
Those conversations are happening in the background. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Did any other councillor have a question or a comment? No? So you're seconding? Did you have a question or a comment? No?
I'll speak now. Yeah. So the officer recommendation directly responds to many of the issues raised by residents. Rather than accepting the design as is, Council's advocating for a balanced outcome for a people-focused Watsonia precinct, and this is what we're after. It's being done by exploring alternatives for parking and preserving opportunities for housing, which is really important near a station, local services and a more active town centre. So Council is seeking stronger commitments for a coordinated upgrade to Watsonia Station, improved pedestrian and cycling connections, very important as well, and for more inclusive design features. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item at all? Councillor Mary.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Kathleen Petrus and her team for the excellent work on this submission to the Urban Design and Landscape Plan process for ministerial approval and for the report that we have before us. In particular, I'm grateful for how they have taken the M80 Ring Road completion project proposal for the Watsonia Station car park, and through applying localised knowledge and expertise, produced an alternative council submission that could better achieve state and council objectives. It would do so by halving the building footprint of the proposed multi-level car park to leave room for future inclusion of residential and mixed-use development. This submission works more comprehensively towards integrating obligations to co-locate housing, employment and services into Council's existing vision for the Watsonia Station precinct. The proposed submission does not compromise the car parking spaces through the proposed retention of the 280 commuter car parks at Fensham Reserve on the other side of the Nell in a short walking distance. However, I do take on board Michelle Jovis's comments that she made today about seeking to have that land returned to community, so that will feature in my ongoing consideration. Just very quickly, I'd like to say, also, not in response to Melissa Murphy-Webster, but in addition, that we did have the disability champions from our community, Connected Communities group go and consult and meet with the planners of the state submission, and they produced some significant feedback from an accessibility perspective. The first point questioning the value of building an all abilities accessibility multi-storey car park if the Watsonia train station itself remains inaccessible. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Alicia.
Thanks, Mayor. I have a number of comments. So I agree with comments made by Councillor Di Pasquale. There definitely should have been integration with the Watsonia station. It's a key failure for me on the delivery, and I appreciate that the report as provided is really strong in its response. So the UDS sets out 27 high-level objectives across 8 principles, and it's hard to find a principle or an objective that they tick the box on. Seems to me that the clear overriding response is to provide no net loss of parking, and I feel like they've ticked this box and then they've moved on. But without the integration of the Watsonia car park, Watsonia station, without all of the requirements as in the other principles that have been put forward, this is a failure. The fact that they have not included any affordable or social housing on a state government-owned property, it's a fail for me based on that alone. The fact that they are not including this when it is a critical issue for the state government, I just cannot strengthen that comment that council will be held to account for what housing we are providing and where we're providing opportunities, and for state government not to uphold this in their delivery of this project, clear failure. I'd also like to mention that the tree canopy, thank you, the tree canopy and insufficient to address climate resilience and critical measures qualified as where possible. Now, we've seen this with the North East Link of the where possible has been diminished at every opportunity. So we seek clear indication that we're going to have housing on the site, that we're going to have mixed use on the site. It delivers an urban design that council and council constituents want, and not this current failure, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Peter.
I'll agree with Councillor Curry on that. And this isn't the first instance where the state government are acting against their very program of delivering housing and key urban transport hubs. They abandoned the community and the opportunity to put a multi-storey building in Greensborough because they rushed the project through a car park, a multi-deck car park above the bus station, just so they could get it done before an election period. This is not going to deliver us long-term good urban design outcomes. If we're going to rush ourselves into another, just another car park next to a train station and abandon housing in the most important area, a transport hub, again, in Banyule twice, when the state government tells us we need to put 6-storey buildings in our most important heritage areas, in the back streets, it's an outrage. So I think this is a very important submission. I fully support Alicia Curry on her statements. And I think our state government really start needing to do what they say we should do as well.
Thanks, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Mark, as the mover, would you like a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I don't think right of reply, well, I think we're unanimous. We are going to endorse this submission, but I think those comments, I think they're valid. Those comments are valid, but I don't want it to sound in the community or to our officers that we are opposing anything that they're doing with regards to this submission, how they're acting and how they're working. And we are advocating very hard for housing around our train stations and transport links, and better car parking outcomes and better use of transport. So we do have a very extensive advocacy, and the station, Watsonia Station, is on the top of the list. So it's not, it's a bit, I don't want to take it down, because we do want to, as a council, be united in how we're advocating, and I think we are very much so by what I'm hearing tonight. So thank you very much, councillors, for your support in the Watsonia area. Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, councillor. I now put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Item 12.1, Olympic Leisure Centre update. There are 2 speakers on this item. We have a video message played on behalf of Nina Crawley, and she is speaking for the recommendation.
I'd like to speak specifically to the community feedback opportunities as listed in item 12.1. I thank Council for the update on the consultation, but I have some questions and suggestions about increased accountability and transparency moving forward in the consultations. I note that a community group I'm a member of, OVAN, was listed as one of the consultative groups. And while I thank Council for their time in meeting with us, I would characterise these meetings as updates and information sharing, not as genuine opportunities for consultation, as I cannot see any of the suggestions or feedback that we provided significantly reflected in the plans and visions for the library space. For example, OVAN and Exodus both expressed a desire to have rough sleepers welcomed into the space and include their need to access showers, somewhere to have a cup of tea, somewhere to build connections, relax and recoup. And I cannot see this reflected anywhere in the vision. As I said, this is just one specific example of the type of feedback we provided for what we feel the community needs are for the space. So I ask, is Council able to detail any significant impact to the community consultation with any of them for the groups mentioned in the agenda has had on the library space and what the result of those consultations have been? And in the future, I would like to see you commit to greater transparency. For example, listing ideas considered and reasons why they were accepted or rejected. Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question and particularly for the opportunity to submit a video question. Much appreciated.
Thanks very much, Nina and IT. Our speaker did have a question in relation to the consultation, the community consultation, asking if any of the OVAN's ideas were taken up, and I'm just wondering if the appropriate officer could respond.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The short answer is that consultation, as outlined in the officer report, is still open to the public, so consultation is not concluded in relation to the library. All of that information and encouraging all residents to give us their feedback in respect of that, which will then be reported back to Council. In relation to some of the comments specifically directed to Council around the consultation process, it probably is important to underscore that OVAN were actually involved in developing the original consultation questionnaire which was circulated, and the responses to that particular exercise are featured in the attachment to this evening's report. So we are certainly taking note of community feedback, including that from OVAN. We've also deepened our relationships in terms of trying to rebuild some trust across the community with different agencies and organisations and individuals, and this is a work in progress.
Thanks very much, Director. Our next speaker, Councillor Mary.
Thank you, Mayor. A question to the relevant director, which will be Joseph Tobacco. With regards to the speaker's questions around rough sleepers and their possible access to some basic respite needs within the facility, access to showers, cup of tea, place to sit. How are the plans that are being developed going to respond to these needs? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor. The short response is that Council has invested significantly in its assertive outreach program, which is now fully operational in partnership with Mary Outreach Support Services. That is one of the primary ways in which Council is addressing the issue of homelessness and people sleeping rough across the municipality, and we're seeing some good outcomes associated with that initiative. It goes without saying that every council facility, notwithstanding those that may have some child safety related obligations, are welcoming spaces for all people in the community, including those people who are sleeping rough. Our partnership and our experience with the Yarra Plenty Library Service is one in which we do experience lots of people sleeping rough attending our facilities. We accommodate those people in the best way possible and connect them with the services and supports, including those through Mary Outreach Support. So insofar as all of our facilities, all of our buildings, that is the current practice. We also do offer and facilitate access to shower passes whenever they're requested through officers and through our Family and Community Services team. We always make those available. So that is a practice that applies across all buildings, not necessarily or specifically individual sites.
Thanks very much, Director. Did any other councillor have a question? Nope. Okay. Jai Sanford is here. He'll address the council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Welcome, Jai. Nice to see you, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, councillors. I think the report itself raises a few more kind of questions than it answers. The clearest takeaway from the report is that closing the pool has created a significant gap in the 3081 community, and that gap, it hasn't been resolved. The report itself identifies the closure of the aquatics as the primary barrier for participation, and that reflects how central the pool was to how people used this space, or even who wanted to use this space. For many people, the pool was the reason they used the centre at all. People relied on it for fitness, rehabilitation, mental health, and social connection. So removing it fundamentally changes, and has changed, who the space works for and who gets left behind. Yes, obviously there are replacement arrangements, access to Ivanhoe and other relocated programs, but they're clearly not equivalent as outlined in the report. Distance, timing and accessibility are now all new barriers, particularly for people who were already relying on the fact that they had a local and accessible facility. And for some people, that has been enough to disengage completely. What concerns me is that none of this was unforeseen. The community advocacy groups, OVAN as mentioned, and even the Australian Medical Association has been consistent about how important aquatics are, and yet the decision was made anyway. Now we're effectively being asked to move forward and focus on what's next without really addressing that loss. There is a mention of a future feasibility study for water play, but that's just a possibility. And for a community that has clearly and loudly said that aquatics matter, that level of uncertainty is not good enough. There's a broader issue of trust, with some expectations around timelines and outcomes not being met, which has left people feeling like they've, decisions have been made first and explained later. So if OLC is meant to be a hub for wellbeing, connection and inclusion for 3081, then removing one of its most essential services without a clear replacement has already undermined that goal, and council needs to do more than just proceed as planned.
Thanks very much, Jai. Thanks for joining us this evening. Okay. Does any councillor have any question of officers before we move to the motion? Councillor Mary.
Sorry, just a quick one. Thank you, Mayor. Can I ask the relevant director what is happening with the water park feasibility study at the moment?
Through you, Mayor, on behalf of my colleague, I can confirm that there will be a briefing of council just in relation to the preliminary investigations and works, and that will be briefed to council very shortly.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for that clarification. Any other councillor wish to ask any questions at all of the officers? Councillor Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. To the Director of Wellbeing. Is that right? Beg your pardon. Just an update on the budget for this project, how we're tracking, and how you foresee that we're going to execute this project to plan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. So Council resolved to allocate a budget of $1.8 million for the uplift of the centre. In December of 2025, we were also notified through a successful application under the Living Libraries Fund for an additional $200,000 contribution from the state. So that boosted the overall investment to $2 million. The project is on budget at this current point in time. The first stage of works, which relates to the repurposing of the pool halls, into a group fitness studio as well as the gymnasium with an expanded range of equipment. Is anticipated to be open to the public, operational in May at this stage. We have had some unforeseen issues in relation to some copper theft and a fire on the roof of the building, which was unfortunate but did create some slight delays. However, our project team are working with our contractors to pick up pace and to deliver the project as originally envisaged, and we'll see the library works commencing at the facility once the gym is operational. That's one of the key elements of the chess pieces in terms of bringing the project to life.
Thanks very much. Any other councillor have a question? Okay. Calling for a motion. Do we have a mover? Councillor Mary O'Kane. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Elizabeth Neely. Councillor Mary, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to both speakers who are very familiar with the facility, and just a very quick congratulations actually to Nina Crowley, who gave birth to her third child about 2 weeks ago, so it was a big effort for her to get that video up. I welcome this report. The purpose of which is to provide transparency and to give an update on the changes to the OLC since its closure, the closure of the pools in October. I'd like to acknowledge the significant impact that the closure has had on the aquatics users' daily lives, and how hard it has been to adjust, for some to adjust to these changes, as the Speaker, Jai Sanford, was alluding to or discussing. But I'd also like to commend the resourceful and enthusiastic work of many officers across many teams and the Yarra Plenty Regional Library to realise the best possible outcome for the OLC going forward. This is an exceptionally important project for this part, indeed all of Banyule, as there is an enormous amount riding on its success. The OLC transformation must lead to a thriving, bustling hub catering for diverse health and social needs, as this outcome is the prerequisite for Council to advocate for its future redevelopment. And to recall, this work has already been envisaged by the Council-led broad-based community working group that was working, I think, until 2022. I think that any future redevelopment needs to aesthetically and substantially uplift the quality of Heidelberg West's or West Heidelberg's social and community infrastructure and contribute to enhancing structural equity across Banyule. Regarding the users of OLC Aquatics, Council has suspended the OLC members and permitted free access to the Ivanhoe Aquatic Centre until November this year, and has made significant concessions for casual users also. Adequate alternative arrangements for those who came to the women's only Friday night sessions has been and remains challenging, despite officers' extensive and ongoing efforts. Offerings are currently split across 3 venues, and I acknowledge the impact this is having on a community that previously could come together in one place. Exploration of the alternative that meets their needs better continues, including upcoming trials at Reservoir Leisure Centre. I have a few other points, but really I'd just like to summarise by saying that council officers are really putting all their effort into making this the best possible facility and one that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Liz, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, just briefly, Mayor. I look forward to the further activation of Olympic Leisure Centre, a centre for all people. I'm pleased to see that the delivery of the new gym is underway and the women's only programming is existing at a few venues. La Trobe is exploring some women's only dry programs, which I think is excellent, like pickleball, which is a lot of fun for people of all ages. In terms of the library, as the Director Tobacco mentioned, the community engagement activities are still underway. So far, some of the feedback in the report was about flexible library hours are requested and also longer allocations of opening hours. So that's something for us to consider going forward. The feedback on the library design is really good. I think it's amazing to have this level of feedback from the community when designing buildings, because as we know, people have different opinions on things. But to sum it up, it seems from the report to be creating spaces for people of different ages in different areas of the library that are encouraging and that are practical, which is really good. And I will just give a plug to the Shaping Banyule website. Please give your feedback if you are interested. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Mary, would you like a right of reply? Nope. Okay. I now put that in motion. All those in favour? That is carried. Sorry, we are now up to general business. We have Councillor Alicia Curry has an item she'd like to share with us.
Thanks, Mayor. Just an update on the McLeod level crossing removal. Consultation is now open, so you can head to the bigbuild.vic.gov.au and look for community consultation on the McLeod LXRP or search through Google. There was a number of sessions on this evening. The next session is running on Thursday, 16th of April, 3 sessions from 10 a.m. to 12:45. It asks you to register, but they are being held in the McLeod Hall. There's also online sessions. There was one on the 1st of April and the next is on the 15th of April. A lot of community concern around this, so I hear from a number of residents, mostly around the pedestrian crossing. So I can see from the artist's impressions that the pedestrian crossing is under the bridge there. There is only the one option to review, so it is only the bridge. Please put your feedback in, whether that's online or at one of their sessions. I suggest you get it in on a submission form. Council's also asked the level crossing removal to provide toilets at this location. We have yet to hear whether that's a possibility, so I'm looking for that. And stay tuned because this is an ongoing project, but do get your submissions in. From what I hear, there's a lot of interest, and so it must be reflected back to the big build as council will be, we've already put our submission in. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Mary has an item as well.
Thank you, Mayor. On Friday, the 27th of March, Council had a small local event down at Olympic Park, which has recently been, the development of which has recently been finished for local community, and it was an incredibly successful event. Thanks to the many officers that put in time and ingenuity in getting creative people down there to engage with the local community. It was dreadful weather, absolutely dreadful weather. And despite that, we had the most lovely community turnout. Parents, kids, people with dogs. Some of the feedback, 2 things that kind of struck me. One was from people that came, was that it was really, really lovely to see something for community there. They felt that it was a really welcoming and grounding experience, that they were recognised in this space. And the second is they were really, really grateful to meet people from our First Nations Barberton Beak gathering place and learn about them, and also to just, I suppose, play, get henna, patterns, drawings, or face painting, or bubbles, or soccer clinics, or cricket clinics. Yeah, it was an exciting time. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. And Councillor Alida, I think you've got an item? A couple of items. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Every second Saturday of the month is the Ivanhoe Produce Swap Meet. if you have homegrown produce to share, this swap is for you. A great turnout on Saturday saw locals swap homegrown veggies, fruit, plants and various other things. There was something really for everyone. So if you'd like to be part of this, it's open to all residents in Banyule. The next swap is on Saturday the 9th of May. It's at Ivanhoe Library in the cafe area, and it runs from 10:30 to 12 o'clock. And if you want more information, I do have a phone number, 9497 5780. You might even pick something up for Mum, given that Mother's Day is the following day. I also thought I'd just give a quick plug to Ivanhoe Traders Association. The association has gone through an enormous facelift with a new committee, and as such, new events being organised. It's very exciting to see what this new look committee is promoting in the way of initiatives. So there is an exciting initiative coming up on Sunday the 3rd of May from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Wesley Avenue off Upper Heidelberg Road. That's the street where Pinky's Cafe, the popular Pinky's Cafe is. And it's going to be an Ivanhoe Sounds and Streets event, and described as a vibrant community-focused music pop-up park. The event will feature a full afternoon of live performances from talented artists, creating a relaxed and welcoming atmosphere designed to encourage visitors to stay longer and explore the precinct. So there's going to be a focus on takeaway food and beverage specials for the period of 11 to 4. And there will also be a promotion for a lead-up to the event on the day. So it's a great opportunity for residents to get out and about and meet more of the traders and experience some community-focused music. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Before we move to public questions, it's been brought to my attention there is a correction that needs to be made in one of our meeting item agendas, and I will hand over to the CEO, Alison Beckwith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just with some of the amendment that was being picked up for item 11.1, the Charlesworth Park Pavilion, it seems that we've inadvertently picked up the referral of some of the drawings incorrectly. I'll just clarify, just so that we can get the right information out. So my understanding is point T of that motion, we have to refer to drawing SK 801, Rev D and SK 802. And then with the linear grain and texture and matte non-reflective finish in lieu of CFC, so fit shown in drawing SK 803. Not 2. So I will just clarify with the mover of that motion that that now is correct, so that we can reflect that in the minutes.
Through you, Mayor, I actually think there is also another revision there in relation to item S. The amendment should have read, in relation to Pavilion B, require that an alternative to charred timber cladding showed in drawing SK 802, revision date 21/6/23, be specified that closely replicates its dark matte and textured appearance to maintain the original architectural intent of a visually recessive form integrated with the Yarra River landscape in lieu of the light-coloured block work shown in drawing SK 802, revision F, date 27 of the 10th. So we actually do need to remove the reference to 2 drawings for Pavilion B because the charred timber only relates to one pavilion, and that's Pavilion B, as was put up in my original. So SK 802, correct, remove the one. Revision D, removing the, so it's SK 802, and then revision D, and SK 803.
Councillors, it's really important that we actually get this motion right.
Yes, it is important.
Because we need to be able to move very clearly to the planning applicant.
Right, so shall I read it out again then?
It would be great if you could read it out again. Thank you.
Mayor, can we potentially request an adjournment till we get this right and bring it back into the chamber?
We can suspend standing orders at the moment and get that right.
Yes, for 5 minutes. I did send it to our governance manager and hoping it could just be put up as was sent.
Yeah, the issue is that we've had a council group move a motion that was incorrect. Now, I don't think we have the time to actually adjourn that again to the following meeting.
No.
So I actually want to get the motion moved correctly and get it voted on again so that we can actually record that in our minutes so that we can actually get the right advice out to the applicant. So we might just take a pause in standing orders, if that's okay with you, Mayor.
Okay, so we will take a pause. It is currently 9:09. We will pause for 5 minutes to 9:14 while we get this correct. Thank you. Everyone, we have 1 more minute before we return. 1 more minute. Okay. That was 5 minutes. Are we able to return to the item to vote on the correct information, please? Could I ask everyone to take their seats, please, so we can return to this item to vote for the correction? Okay. Thanks, everyone. If we could take a seat, we will return to the meeting. I'm going to hand back over to our CEO, Alison Beckwith, to explain the process from here.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Gallery, and those at home for your patience. As you understand, we did vote on item 11.1, 18 to 28 Irvine Road, Ivanhoe, demolition and construction of new pavilions at Charlesworth Park, planning 316-2025. Through that amendment and that exchange, we did find that there was an administration error where one of the drawings and the date referring to that drawing was actually listed incorrectly. So I'm going to ask the council group through you, Mayor, if we could have that amended motion put back up on screen, and that I seek the mover to move that motion again, and that then we get a seconder for that motion, and then we redo the voting so that we can record that, so that we've got a transparent record of the correct motion that council intended to vote on tonight. So through you, Mayor, if we can do that process, I would greatly appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks very much, everyone. So now we have, I'm calling for a motion. Do we have a mover on this item? Councillor Alida McKern. Is there a seconder? So the seconder was Councillor Alicia Curry. So Councillor Alida, would you please read the changes that have been made, the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. The changes are minor and they refer more to the title of the drawings, and there was just a bit of mix-up with dates and drawing referrals. So, for point R, in lieu of 27th of the 10th, 25, the drawing reference is to the 7th of the 10th, 25. To point S, it's drawing, we're striking out drawing SK 801, revision D, and keeping SK 802, revision D, dated 21st of the 6th, 23. that too should refer to the 7th of the 10th, 25. I'm just going to, with due respect here, look at what I have written, because I'm still not sure that it's adequately reflecting what indeed I have written. So with point S, what we do need to delete is the reference to SK 803, because the reference to SK 803 refers to Pavilion B. We are only referring to, Pavilion A, Pavilion B in this revision, so we need to strike out SK 803 and keep the date as the 7th of the 10th, 25. And then moving to point T, which refers to both Pavilions A and B in relation to the spotted gum, that we refer to drawing SK 801 revision D and SK 802 revision D. And then further down referring to, again, SK 803 revision F, and insert SK 803 revision F, because there are the two pavilions referred to here, which are separate drawings. So we need to insert after revision F, SK and SK 803. 803 revision F, date 7th of the 10th, 25. And that's the motion that should be moved.
Can I just seek a clarification there from the mover? Just in that last line, so it is to read CFC soft fit shown drawing SK 802 revision F and SK 803, or are they both 803?
They are, one is SK 802 revision F and SK 803 revision F, and grammatically we should be saying of the CFC soffit shown in, if we could introduce, just insert in after shown and before drawing. And drawing should be plural. Correct.
Okay. So, Councillor, you're happy with that now? That's correct, you're moving that? Okay. So just to be clear, the intent of the item is the same. It is simply the minutiae or the detail of the drawings that are being referred to, and we needed to get that correct. Just confirming, Councillor Alicia, you are seconding this as it is with the corrections? Okay. We've had our debate. We're just moving the motion. All those in favour? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In favour? Against? Not voting. We have 1 abstinence. Okay, so that is carried. Thank you for your patience. We are now moving on to public question time. We have 3 public questions. If any members of the public are in the gallery who have a public question, you're welcome to approach the lectern and ask your question when your name is read out. For those who are not present, the question will not be read out and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. The minutes will be available on our website later this week. Please note, for those who are here who are reading out their question, councillors already have the background information. When asking your question this evening, kindly proceed directly to the question. So the first question is from Brendan Murphy of Bundoora. He's not present this evening. We have a question from David Peach of Lowell Plenty. David, I believe you're here this evening. Welcome, David. Please ask your question.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. In drawing up the feasibility study for 109 Waterdale Road, is adequate consideration being given for increased future car parking needs on this site, given that there are already design plans being developed for at least one other high-rise building with minimal car parking space on the vacant site in Norman Street opposite Ivanhoe Church?
Thanks very much, David. And that will be answered by our Acting Director of City Development, Jonathan Risby. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So the feasibility for the site and public realm will consider current and future parking needs, including factors like increased development activity in Ivanhoe. Part of the feasibility assessment will consider how car parking can be relocated to allow for a public park. In reference to 16 Seddon Street, any development proposal assessed by Council is considered on its own merit, including the adequacy of the proposed on-site parking. The application for 16 Seddon was applied for through the State Government Development Facilitation Program and was formally assessed by the State Government, not Council.
Thank you very much. And our third question is from David Mulholland of Ivanhoe. Thanks, David. If you could ask your question.
Thanks, Mayor. Given Council has approved the recommendation of item 11.3 at the 23rd of March meeting, which involved the feasibility of removing 65 well-used Ivanhoe shopping car spaces to create a public open space, for transparency, can Council advise the estimated total cost of the feasibility studies, community engagement and concept design phases, and confirm which budget or funding source will be used for them?
Thanks very much, David. And the response will be given by our Acting Director of City Development, Jonathan Risby.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you again. A project plan including expenditure estimates for a feasibility study and subsequent project stages is currently being developed. The draft 26-27 budget process proposes $50,000 for an open space plan for Ivanhoe Activity Centre, which is a key action from the Banyule Open Space Plan 2016 to 2032. In addition to this, $20,000 has been set aside in the operational budget for traffic and occupancy study, parking occupancy study. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you all very much for your attendance and your contribution this evening. There is no council, no there isn't, there's no confidential meeting tonight. So I will close the meeting at 9:27. The next ordinary meeting of council will be held on Monday the 4th of May. Thank you very much for your contribution. Please get home safely.